Welcome back to the channel, guys. I am the Drunken Goth, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at some more of the Stargate ships that I have attempted to build in Starfield. Now, as a massive sci-fi fan, and very specifically the Stargate franchise in particular being a very, very strong favourite, it was always my intention to try and build as many of the Stargate ships as possible. So this is the latest batch of what I have managed to come up with. So we start off at ship services, this time in Aquila, and we go into view and modify ships. Now obviously I released a video before with the Daedalus, which has advanced a little bit since last time, as well as the Aurora, which again I had to rebuild after going through New Game Plus, quite annoyingly, but managed to get that back to where it was. And of course the O'Neill, and thank you so much for the people who actually told me you can flip the Docker round so that I could finally get rid of that tower on the top. So we start off with one from Stargate Atlantis, and that is the Asuran or Lantean Cruiser. Now this has been a particular headache, and to be honest I'm still not entirely happy with it, but as I've sort of mentioned in previous videos, given the tools that you're provided with, it's not really practical to get it exactly as it would have looked like in the show. Obviously there was a few pictures on screen just as we started onto this particular ship showing what it should look like, but as I say, this was kind of the closest I could get it to looking reasonably like it does in the show. Not overly happy with it as I say, but again, given the tools you're provided with, it's as close as I could really get to. In an ideal world, I'm hoping that with future downloads, future DLCs that come for the game, we do get more parts added to the shipbuilding system, like they did with the extra stuff for settlements in Fallout 4. But for the moment, this is as close as I've managed to get, and it's not too far away. Proportions are out, it doesn't quite look there, but again, as close as I could really get with the tools provided. So next up we have one from the later seasons of SG-1, and that is the Asgard science vessel, the Daniel Jackson. A few pictures on screen there. And this again was not one that was particularly easy to come up with ideas of how exactly to get it done. Obviously with no sort of curved parts, curved wings that you can add, that wing across the back had to just be straight and had to just be engine braces. But again, it's sort of, if anything, it still maintains the rough profile of what it should be like, and I'm not overly disappointed. The one nice thing is that by trying to copy this particular ship, it is actually very effective in the game, as the game's AI tends to target the centre of a ship, and with obviously the science vessel having nothing in the centre, it does make it quite effective in battle. Unfortunately, when you're looking at it through the builder, it does take a hell of a lot of squinting to even see the profile, but again in game when it's flying around, it does give you that rough silhouette of what it should be. And although again I'm not overly happy with it compared to say what the Daedalus turned out like, or even the Aurora, it's not too far away, and again if you squint hard enough, yeah, it's not too bad. So finally we have one from Stargate Atlantis, and that is the Traveller ship. A few pictures on screen there of what it should be like, and this is pretty close, or as close as you can really get with the tools you're given. Now I will be totally honest, I did rip off the base of the ship, the very basic components used in building it, as it started off life as a spacer hyena that I stole, and basically started to modify it from there. As to me, you could see the potential for turning it into the traveller ship from Stargate Atlantis. And apart from the colour palette that I've got at the moment on this, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's very close. Obviously ripped out the square engines and put the round ones in just to give it more of the accuracy to what it was like in the show. The bridge, the Stroud-Eklund Kontiki bridge, I think was perfect, so that stayed as well. Some of the parts at the front I changed just to give it a little bit more of the profile. Obviously added a little bit of extension to the side, as in the show they seem to have like a sort of attachments to the side that sort of stick out. But I'm relatively happy with this, relatively happy. As I say, it did start off life as a spacer hyena, but with some small adjustments I think it's pretty good. It's pretty close with this one. So, as well as the Stargate franchise ship builds, I thought I would also add some shipbuilding tips in here, as there was quite a few things that it's took me a very long time to learn, and quite a few things I wish somebody had told me when I first started going into the shipbuilder. So, to start off with, we begin with the Retalia, which is not really based on anything. The Retalia is a ship that I've basically built as one of those ships that can't really be beaten in battle, so you can just use it for anything. So we start off with the Retalia, and for a start off we're going to look at the engines. Now, as far as I knew, I thought bottom of the list, bottom engines, they are going to be the biggest. So you scroll all the way down to the bottom and you come out with these. So 4 of these on the back of the ship, that is going to be as good as you can get. That's the most power that you can use to propel the ship forward. So if you look at the mobility at the minute, the mobility not great. Mass obviously still quite high. And then I found that if you look between this square one from Slayton Aerospace and the round one, look at the max power usage and engine thrust and manoeuvring thrust. Now, while this round one, the Raladine one, does seem to be more powerful, yes, it uses 1 more power, but with these only being 2 power rather than 3, we can get a lot more. We can get 6 engines rather than 4. And when you do the math, the combined manoeuvring thrust and the combined total thrust actually ends up as slightly more. So the mobility there has now gone up. It has increased the hull slightly, and it has definitely increased the mass. But essentially, we've managed to make the ship a lot quicker and a lot more mobile very easily by something very simple. Obviously, we do need to then put different landing gears on it, but that was the other thing as well, these landing gears. Landing thrust, which it says on the left there, I did not realise that, again, why I was having to use so many different landing gears, or so many multiples, some needing 6, 7, 8 landing gears to actually take off. I thought, well, surely a landing gear is a landing gear, you need 4, 6, something like that. But no, the landing thrust is actually quite essential, and the best ones in the game, I will definitely advise straight away, is go to Nova Galactic on New Homestead and get them, because they have the highest landing thrust for the smallest actual piece. So definitely go down that route if you're getting quite high on mass. So the next thing is the connectivity of the modules. Now, I was having a lot of trouble when I first started out with trying to get the cockpit to line up with the landing bay, because obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it, you tend to get errors a lot saying that the landing bay doesn't line up with the cockpit. So you think, well, bloody hell, how? Because you've got you know, direct companionways, hubs, etc., that should essentially provide access. So why get this error? Now, it's to do with something that's quite obvious, you know, initially, and that is the arrows that point to the entrances and exits on the different modules, and lining up the landing bay with certain parts, certain hubs, is pretty much down to getting these arrows so that there is a direct path through the ship. Obviously, depending on which modules you put in first, depending on which way you assemble your ship, will alter the inside, which I'm a little bit frustrated with. I wish you could actually edit which ladders that you can use, which doorways that you can use a little bit better than the in-game system currently. But again, it's pretty simple to figure it out once you realise, well, hang on a minute, that's definitely got an arrow pointing down there, so this was one with a ladder entrance, so that needs to line up roughly with an entrance that you've snapped into place relatively early on with your cockpit. Especially since when you're very focused on the process of building, you tend to forget about this relatively quickly, and you just see snap points, and the snap points just become, right, well, that lines up, that's fine, that's snapped into place, it must be fine. But no, it's pretty essential, obviously. I mean, it may sound fairly obvious, but again, it took me a while to get my head round, hang on, that snapped into place, surely that should be fine. So again, it's just one thing that's worth mentioning, as throughout the shipbuilding process, it bugged me a lot that if things snapped into place, why wouldn't they work? And especially the other error, which is ship modules not attached. Now, unfortunately, I've not sort of put a demonstration in this particular bit, but the easiest way to find out which ship modules aren't attached is go to the select all, scroll around the ship, and whatever isn't highlighted in red, there's your problem. Which is, yet again, it's another thing that I wish somebody had told me early on, because again, once you get into some of these larger ship builds, you end up thinking, well, bloody hell, where the hell is it? And taking all sorts of bits and bobs off, trying to desperately find where you've forgotten to connect something up exactly as it needed to be. The next thing is docking ports. And I have to say a massive thank you to the people that put comments on the last shipbuilding video, as the ability to flip it upside down didn't even occur. A lot of them don't have it, a few of them do, but that saved me a lot of headaches when thinking, how can I put it in the right place when you've got these extrusions going up, which are obviously going to be getting in the way. So a massive thank you for that. And yes, there are a few ship docking ports which you can flip upside down, so always worth bearing in mind that you don't have to put it on an outer edge or at the very top. You can put it straight underneath, which is the easiest place, exactly where the landing bay is, as the landing bay is not in use when you're using the docking port in space. Next we have another one which may be fairly obvious to some, it wasn't to me, which is again why I'm mentioning it. That is the cargo modules. Now again, with the cargo modules, my initial thought was that scroll right to the bottom or find the most expensive one, that's obviously going to be the best. But you have to sort of do a little bit of calculating, because as you can see on the left, the different cargo content size, you have to calculate that against the mass it's going to put on the ship, because you can get lower mass modules with higher storage space inside, which again starts to become essential when you're trying to keep the manoeuvrability, the manoeuvring thrust, etc. as usable as possible on the ship. So scrolling straight to the bottom isn't going to give you the best storage space to mass ratio. So again, just another one worth bearing in mind, as again it took me a while to actually start to think, right, I need to calculate this better. Finally, as I mentioned in one of the last videos, I had to go through the whole process of New Game Plus again to level up the starborn powers, and that has meant rebuilding a lot of the ships from scratch all over again and rebuilding all the outposts that I'd managed to build in the meantime. Now I am going to release probably another video just going through some of the outpost things, as one of the only benefits to going through New Game Plus was that anything I'd learnt while basically using it as a sandbox the first time round, I could hone to rebuild the outposts and start building bigger, better, more intricate outposts. So as you can see here, this is one of the larger ones that I've built as kind of an all-in-one thing, and I think it's probably worth just mentioning some of the things that you can learn by going through it, sort of going through New Game Plus and having to start again with all the knowledge you've got from your first playthrough. As I've said before, I'm still not a massive fan of the settlement building. I think Fallout 4 had it a lot better, where you could do a lot more, edit things exactly the way you wanted them. So I'm still not a huge fan, especially of the sort of interior decoration part of things as well, because I mean, I would have much preferred to be able to edit the inside of your ship a lot better than have to start with empty outpost modules. In fact, I think that would have been a lot better of a way to go if you could set up modules that were pre-decorated inside. To me, that would have been a lot easier, a lot quicker, almost a lot more satisfying, or at least have the option to build it pre-decorated and then have the option to get rid of it all and start again if you choose to. But to me, it would have been a lot better to have that as an option for your habs on your ships, rather than go through the grueling process of putting pictures and rugs and chairs, etc. throughout your outposts. So in that sense, still not that much of a fan, but to a degree I am starting to get my head around it a little bit more. I am not hating it, but again, I think there's so many better ways that it could have been implemented, especially when you look at Fallout 4 and how enjoyable I used to find that with the settlement building. In fact, I used to do whole playthroughs where it was literally just building settlements on every different location I could possibly build one, and building them as large as possible. I do hope in the future we get some kind of overhaul to the system, or even some kind of DLC that adds more, edits more, that makes it a little bit better, a little bit easier to work with, and a little bit more enjoyable. But for the moment, I'm getting on as best I can with the system as it is, and obviously back to the Jafar system, where I'm slowly going through every planet and moon so that once again we can get System Lord status and own that entire system. But for now, that is it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like on it, please subscribe to the channel, please share the video, please leave me some comments, let me know what you think to the settlement building, to the ship building, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye bye.